What if your wife was using your 6-year-old twins as the perfect alibi for her affairs? What if every soccer practice, dance class, and playdate was actually cover for her to meet different men while leaving your children with complete strangers? This is my story of discovering that my wife had turned our children's activities into a sophisticated cheating schedule, putting our kids at risk every single weekend just so she could sleep with other men. My name is Marcus. I'm a software developer from Phoenix, and for almost a year I believed my wife was being the perfect dedicated mother, driving our twins to activities and playdates every weekend. But when my children started telling me about mysterious babysitters I'd never heard of, I discovered the most twisted betrayal imaginable. Amanda wasn't just cheating on me. She was using our innocent children as cover for multiple affairs while leaving them in the care of strangers I had never met or approved. By the end of this video, you'll see how one father's investigation into his children's weekend activities exposed a web of deception that put 2 innocent kids in danger, and how I made sure their mother lost custody, her reputation, and everything else she valued. This isn't just about adultery. This is about a mother who endangered her own children for sex, and how justice finally protected the people who mattered most. My wife Amanda and I had been married for 8 years, and we had 6-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, who were absolutely the center of our world. I worked as a senior software developer for a major tech company in Phoenix, which meant I often put in long hours during the week, but I always made sure to keep my weekends completely free for family time. Amanda worked part-time as a graphic designer from our home office, which gave her the flexibility to handle most of the kids' daily activities, school pickups, and doctor appointments. For the first 5 years of the twins' lives, our weekend routine was simple, predictable, and perfect. We would all go to the park together as a family, have movie nights with popcorn and blankets in the living room, visit my parents who lived across town, or take day trips to places like Sedona or Flagstaff. Amanda and I shared all the parenting duties equally, and we both genuinely loved spending time with Emma and Ethan as a complete family unit. Those were some of the happiest years of my life. But about a year ago, everything changed when Amanda suddenly became extremely interested in signing the twins up for organized activities and structured programs. She said she wanted them to be more social with other children and develop new skills like dancing and sports, which honestly made perfect sense to me because they were getting to the age where structured activities could be really beneficial for their development. She enrolled Emma in dance classes and Ethan in soccer, both of which supposedly met on Saturday mornings at different locations across the Phoenix area. Amanda enthusiastically volunteered to handle all the transportation for these new activities, explaining that it would be much easier for her to manage the different schedules and locations since she was more familiar with driving around the city during the day. She created these incredibly detailed calendars on her phone and computer showing exactly when each child needed to be where, and she seemed genuinely excited about being more involved in their extracurricular development. I was actually grateful that she was taking the lead on this because my demanding work schedule made it really difficult for me to commit to regular weekend transportation duties. What started as basic weekend activities soon expanded into a completely full schedule that took up most of Saturday and Sunday. Amanda signed Emma up for additional art classes on Sunday afternoons and enrolled Ethan in what she called a weekend sports camp that supposedly met both Saturday and Sunday for several hours each day. She also started arranging frequent playdates with other families from their school, claiming she wanted the twins to build stronger friendships with their classmates and develop better social skills. I was honestly impressed by Amanda's sudden dedication to the children's social development and educational enrichment, and I supported her efforts by taking over most of the household responsibilities like cleaning, grocery shopping, and meal prep while she managed their increasingly busy weekend schedule. Most Saturdays and Sundays, Amanda would pack snacks and water bottles, load both kids into her car around 9 in the morning, and return home around 4 in the afternoon looking tired but satisfied. She would come back with detailed stories about their activities, which children they had played with, what new skills they were learning, and how much Emma and Ethan were enjoying their new structured routines. Everything seemed perfect, and I thought we had found the ideal balance between family time and childhood development. The first thing that started to make me suspicious was how exhausted and cranky the twins seemed after their supposed fun-filled activity days. When Amanda brought Emma and Ethan home on weekend afternoons, they were often irritable, hungry, and acting like they hadn't been getting much attention or stimulation throughout the day. For kids who had supposedly spent 6 or 7 hours at dance classes, soccer practice, art workshops, and exciting playdates with friends, they seemed more bored and restless than excited and energized. When I would ask them enthusiastically about their weekend activities, their answers were always surprisingly vague and inconsistent. Emma would say that dance class was just okay but couldn't remember what specific dances she had learned, who her instructor was, or even what the dance studio looked like. Ethan would say soccer was fun but couldn't tell me about any specific games they had played, what position he liked, or which kids were his teammates. For children who normally talk non-stop about every detail of their experiences, their complete lack of enthusiasm and specific memories about these activities seemed really strange and concerning. I also started noticing that Amanda never had any concrete details about the activities either, which was completely unlike her usual parenting style. When I asked about Emma's progress in dance or whether Ethan was developing any particular soccer skills, Amanda would give only generic answers like they're doing great or the instructors are very nice. She never mentioned funny things that happened, other parents she had met, specific achievements the kids had accomplished, or interesting stories that normally come from spending hours watching your children participate in organized activities. Another major red flag was that Amanda never wanted me to attend any of these activities with them, which was completely different from how we had handled everything else in our parenting. When I suggested coming along to watch Emma's dance class or cheer Ethan on at soccer practice, Amanda would immediately say that the facilities were too crowded and that my presence might be distracting for the kids while they were trying to learn. She claimed that the twins performed much better when it was just her there providing support, and that adding another parent to the mix would disrupt the comfortable routine they had worked so hard to establish. The thing that really captured my attention was Amanda's completely changed phone behavior during these weekend activity trips. She used to text me constantly when she was out with the kids, sending cute photos of them playing and regular updates about what they were doing, where they were going next, and when they would be home. But suddenly, she stopped communicating during their supposed activity times entirely. When I would text her to ask how things were going or request pictures of the kids having fun, her responses were always delayed by hours and extremely brief, like she was busy with something that had nothing to do with supervising children at organized activities. I started paying much closer attention to what the twins were wearing when they left for their full day of activities versus what they looked like when they came home. Their clothes were always perfectly clean and unwrinkled, like they hadn't been running around playing soccer, dancing energetically, or engaging in any kind of physical activities for hours. Their shoes weren't dirty, their hair wasn't messy from playing, and they didn't seem physically tired or worn out from being active all day long. But the most concerning detail was something Emma mentioned very casually one Sunday evening while I was giving her a bath. She said, "Daddy, why does Aunt Sarah always have such different movies than we do at home?" When I asked her what she meant by that, Emma explained that while she and Ethan were at Aunt Sarah's house watching cartoons and eating snacks, Amanda was always in a different room watching grown-up movies with other adults. I had never heard of any Aunt Sarah in our lives, and when I asked Amanda about this person later that evening, she quickly dismissed it by saying that Sarah was just a helpful volunteer at one of the activity centers who sometimes watched kids during break periods while parents discussed schedules with instructors. But something about her explanation felt rushed and defensive in a way that made me even more suspicious about what was really happening during these mysterious weekend outings. I decided that I needed to investigate what was really happening during these weekend activities, but I had to be extremely careful because I didn't want to alarm Amanda or create unnecessary drama if my growing suspicions turned out to be wrong. I started by doing some basic research on the locations where the twins were supposedly taking their classes and participating in organized sports. When I called the dance studio where Emma was allegedly enrolled, they told me that their children's classes were only held on Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings from 10 to 11, definitely not the full-day sessions that Amanda had been describing to me. When I called the soccer facility where Ethan was supposedly practicing and attending weekend sports camps, they informed me that they had no record of any weekend sports camps whatsoever, and that all of their youth programs only met for 1-hour sessions on Saturday mornings during the fall season. None of the activities that Amanda had been describing to me actually existed in the way she had been telling me, which meant she was systematically lying about where our children were spending their weekends and what they were doing during those long absences from home. I made the difficult decision to install a GPS tracking app on Amanda's phone using our family plan's parental control features, telling myself that this was primarily about ensuring the safety of our children rather than spying on my wife. But I'll admit that I was desperate to understand what was really happening during those mysterious 6-hour weekend disappearances. What I discovered over the next 2 weekends completely shattered my trust in Amanda and made me genuinely fear for our children's safety and well-being. Instead of driving to dance studios, soccer fields, and activity centers like she claimed, Amanda was actually driving to residential neighborhoods and staying at different private houses for hours at a time while the twins were apparently somewhere else entirely. On Saturdays, she would drop the kids off at a house in Scottsdale that I didn't recognize, then drive 15 minutes away to a completely different house where she would remain stationary for 3 to 4 hours. On Sundays, she would take them to a house in Tempe, then travel to yet another location across town where she would stay for similar extended periods. The horrifying realization hit me that Amanda had been systematically leaving our 6-year-old children with complete strangers while she went to meet other people for reasons she obviously couldn't tell me about. Our twins weren't learning dance moves or developing soccer skills like I believed. They were being babysat by people I had never met, never approved of, and knew absolutely nothing about while their mother was engaged in activities that required elaborate deception and cover stories. The following weekend, I made the decision to follow Amanda and the twins at a careful distance to see exactly what was happening and who these mysterious people were. I watched in shock as she dropped Emma and Ethan off at a house I had never seen before, where a woman I had never met in my life came outside and took our children inside without any interaction or conversation that indicated a professional childcare arrangement. Then I followed Amanda to a different house about 20 minutes away where she spent over 3 hours while our children were in the care of this complete stranger. When I researched the address where Amanda had spent those 3 hours, I discovered that it belonged to a man named Derek Chin who was recently divorced and worked as a personal trainer at a local gym. When I looked up his social media profiles out of curiosity and growing dread, I found multiple photos of him with Amanda at restaurants, hiking trails, and social events that I had never heard about and certainly never been invited to. They looked like an established couple in these photos, holding hands and appearing intimate in ways that made it crystal clear that Amanda was having a full-blown affair while using our children as her alibi and cover story. But Derek wasn't the only man in Amanda's secret life. Over the next several weeks of careful tracking and documentation, I discovered that Amanda had been rotating between at least 3 different men on weekends, systematically dropping our kids off with various babysitters and caregivers while she maintained multiple simultaneous relationships. She had turned our children's supposed educational and social activities into an incredibly sophisticated scheduling system that allowed her to conduct several affairs while making me believe she was being a dedicated, involved mother who was prioritizing our twins' development and happiness. The level of planning and deception involved was absolutely staggering, and the risks she was taking with our children's safety made me sick to my stomach. I spent 2 weeks meticulously documenting everything before confronting Amanda, because I understood that gaining custody of our children would depend entirely on having absolutely irrefutable evidence of her deception and the serious danger she had been putting Emma and Ethan in every single weekend. I gathered comprehensive GPS tracking data showing her real locations versus her claimed destinations, printed screenshots of her social media interactions with multiple men, and most importantly, I began having very careful, gentle conversations with the twins about their actual weekend experiences. When I asked Emma and Ethan to tell me about their favorite parts of dance class and soccer practice, they both looked genuinely confused and said they had never been to those places at all. Emma told me that Aunt Sarah always had them watch movies and eat snacks in a small room, but that they weren't allowed to go outside, make noise, or ask questions about where their mommy was. Ethan said that sometimes Uncle Mike would be at the house too, and that Amanda had specifically instructed them never to mention these people to Daddy because it would spoil the surprise she was planning. I realized with growing horror that Amanda had been systematically coaching our children to lie about their weekends, teaching them to give vague, rehearsed answers about non-existent activities while she knowingly put them in potentially dangerous situations with people I had never vetted, interviewed, or even heard of. She had turned our 6-year-old twins into unwitting accomplices in her elaborate affair cover-up, making them part of her deception while exposing them to risks I couldn't even calculate. On a Friday evening in November, I finally confronted Amanda with all the evidence I had carefully gathered over the previous month. I waited until the twins were asleep, then set up my laptop at our kitchen table with printed copies of her GPS tracking data proving she had never taken the children to any legitimate activities. Photos of her with multiple different men looking like romantic couples and audio recordings of Emma and Ethan describing their real weekend experiences with various mystery babysitters I had never heard of. When Amanda walked into the kitchen and saw all the evidence spread across our table, her face went completely white and she actually stumbled backward against the wall. For several long moments, she couldn't speak at all, just stared at the documentation of her own systematic deception and the proof that her elaborate lies had been completely exposed. I could see her mind racing as she tried to figure out how much I knew and whether there was any way to talk her way out of the situation. Amanda's first reaction was to deny everything and claim that I was misunderstanding perfectly innocent situations that had reasonable explanations. She said the GPS data was wrong, that the photos with other men were just work colleagues and old friends, and that the children were confused about their activities because they were too young to remember details accurately. But when I played the recorded conversations where Emma and Ethan clearly described Aunt Sarah's house, Uncle Mike's visits, and Amanda's specific instructions not to tell Daddy about these people, she realized that her own children had inadvertently exposed her entire operation. Faced with undeniable evidence from multiple sources, Amanda finally broke down and admitted that she had been having affairs. But she immediately tried to minimize the situation by claiming that the children were always completely safe with trusted babysitters who she had carefully vetted. She said she had never intended for the deception to continue this long, that she had been planning to end the relationships and return to being a devoted wife and mother, and that she had only been trying to find some personal happiness while maintaining our family stability. I told Amanda very clearly that using our children as alibis for her multiple affairs wasn't just adultery and betrayal, it was criminal child endangerment under Arizona law, and that I would be filing for divorce and full custody immediately. I also informed her that I had already contacted a family law attorney who specialized in child welfare cases, and that her behavior constituted multiple violations of basic parental responsibilities that would definitely result in her losing unsupervised access to Emma and Ethan. The legal proceedings moved with surprising speed because the evidence was overwhelming and directly involved the safety and welfare of minor children. Amanda lost all unsupervised visitation rights when the family court judge learned that she had been systematically leaving our twins with unvetted strangers while she carried on multiple simultaneous affairs. Judge Patricia Morrison was particularly harsh in her ruling, stating that Amanda had violated the most fundamental principles of child safety and parental responsibility, and that her actions demonstrated a complete disregard for her children's well-being in favor of her own selfish desires. Amanda's reputation in our entire community was completely destroyed when other parents at Emma and Ethan's school learned what she had been doing with our children. The parents' network in our neighborhood was horrified that someone would use innocent kids as cover for conducting affairs, and Amanda quickly became a social pariah who lost all of her friendships, professional connections, and standing in our community. Even her own family was disgusted by her actions and supported my decision to seek full custody of the twins. Today, I have complete legal and physical custody of Emma and Ethan, who are now 7 years old and thriving in actual legitimate activities that I personally supervise and participate in. Amanda has court-ordered supervised visitation rights for exactly 4 hours every other Sunday, and she's required to complete extensive parenting classes, individual counseling, and child safety courses before she can even request any modifications to the custody arrangement. The twins rarely ask about their mother anymore, and when they do mention her, they consistently say they prefer their new routine where they always know exactly where they're going and who will be taking care of them at all times. The most important lesson I learned from this devastating experience is that some betrayals go far beyond simply cheating on your spouse. They involve deliberately putting your children in harm's way for completely selfish reasons. Amanda didn't just break our marriage vows and destroy our family, she violated the most sacred responsibility that any parent has, which is protecting their children's safety, security, and well-being above all other considerations in life. What makes Amanda's actions even more unforgivable is that she had countless opportunities to handle her unhappiness in our marriage through honest communication, marriage counseling, or even filing for divorce if she truly wanted to be with other people. Instead, she chose the most cruel and dangerous path possible, turning our innocent children into tools for her deception while exposing them to strangers and situations that could have resulted in permanent trauma or worse. But I also learned that a parent's responsibility to protect their children must always come first, even when it means completely destroying a marriage and dismantling a family structure that you thought was permanent. Emma and Ethan deserved so much better than being used as alibis for their mother's affairs, and they deserved better than being left with random people while she prioritized her own sexual desires over their fundamental safety and emotional security. The custody battle was difficult and emotionally draining, but seeing how much happier and more secure the twins have become since we established clear, honest routines has convinced me that I made the right choice. They no longer have to lie about their weekends, they no longer wonder why they're being left with strangers, and they no longer carry the burden of keeping their mother's secrets from their father. If you're a parent and you have any suspicion that your partner might be putting your children at risk, please trust your instincts and investigate immediately, no matter how uncomfortable or painful that process might be. Document everything you discover, prioritize your children's safety above all other considerations including your marriage, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remove your children from a dangerous situation, even when that situation involves their other parent. Children cannot protect themselves from adults who are supposed to care for them, which means it's our job as responsible parents to be vigilant, ask difficult questions, and take decisive action when we discover that someone is endangering the people we love most. Amanda lost everything she claimed to value because she chose temporary pleasure over permanent responsibility, and now Emma and Ethan have the stable, honest home they always deserved. Thanks for watching Revenge Diaries, where protecting innocent children always comes first, and where parents who deliberately endanger their own kids always face exactly the consequences they deserve. No affair is worth risking your children's safety, and no temporary happiness is worth destroying your family's trust forever.